Picture this: medieval England, a land of castles, knights, and outlaws? You bet. It's in this exciting era that our beloved Robin Hood first appears. But hold your horses, we're not talking about the dashing hero in green tights just yet. The earliest mentions of Robin Hood pop up in the late 1200s, and get this, it's in court records. Yep, Robin Hood was the medieval equivalent of John Doe for outlaws. Talk about starting your career with a bang, from 1261 onwards. Names like Robin Hood, Robe Hod, or Robber Hod show up in English court rolls, describing various troublemakers. But here's where it gets interesting. The name Robin Hood might not even refer to a specific person. Robin was a super common nickname for Robert back then, and Hood could mean someone who made hoods or just wore one. Some folks even think Hood might be a dialect version of Wood, suggesting our hero might have originally been known as Robin of the Wood. How's that for a plot twist? Now, why did Robin Hood become such a hit? Well, medieval England was like a pressure cooker of social unrest. After 1066, you had the Normans lording it over the Anglo-Saxons. Imagine being ruled by people who don't even speak your language. Then you had these forest laws that made hunting a rich man's game. If you were a commoner caught poaching, you could lose a hand, or worse. Add to that the Black Death, which turned society upside down. Suddenly, peasants could demand better wages and conditions, and the nobility wasn't thrilled. Oh, and let's not forget the 100 Years' War with France, draining everyone's pockets through heavy taxation. To top it all off, corrupt officials like sheriffs often abused their power, making life miserable for ordinary folks. It's no wonder people loved stories about a guy who stuck it to the man. Robin Hood represented the ultimate fantasy, a hero who could navigate this chaotic world, outsmart the authorities, and come out on top. Here's where it gets juicy. Was Robin Hood real? Well, sort of. There wasn't one specific Robin Hood, but rather a bunch of real-life outlaws who might have inspired the legend. We've got Fulk Fitzwarren, a rebel nobleman who became an outlaw in the early 1200s. His stories got all the elements: conflict with the king, life in the forest, and even a bit of romance. Then there's Roger Godbert, who actually hung out in Sherwood Forest in the 1260s. He was accused of poaching and became a fugitive. Don't forget Robert of Locksley, whose name might ring a bell for Robin Hood fans. There was a real outlaw by this name in Yorkshire in the 13th century. And let's not overlook William of Kensham, known as Willikin of the Weald, who led a guerrilla band against the French in Kent during the 1210s. It's like medieval England was having an outlaw convention. Each of these real-life rebels contributed something to the growing legend of Robin Hood. What's a hero without his sidekicks? Robin's crew is like the medieval Avengers. You've got Little John, the gentle giant who's Robin's right-hand man in the early ballads. Then there's Friar Tuck, a later addition to the legend, who's more into busting heads than saying prayers. Maid Marian, the love interest, showed up fashionably late to the legend, not appearing in the earliest ballads, but becoming a central figure by the 16th century. Will Scarlet, often portrayed as Robin's nephew, is known for his fiery temper and flashy clothes. Much the Miller's Son is one of the original members of the band, appearing in early ballads. And let's not forget the Sheriff of Nottingham, the guy everyone loves to hate, representing corrupt authority and serving as Robin's main nemesis. It's like a medieval soap opera, but with more arrows. Each character reflects different aspects of medieval society, from the corrupt officials to the common folk. Now, let's separate the wheat from the chaff. Robin Hood stealing from the rich to give to the poor? This famous catchphrase doesn't appear in the earliest ballads, originally. Robin was more focused on outsmarting authorities than on wealth redistribution. Robin as a noble supporter of King Richard, that's a later add-on. Like medieval fan fiction, early tales don't mention any specific king. And Sherwood Forest? While it's the star of the show now, Early tales had Robin hanging out in Barnesdale, Yorkshire. It's like the legend got lost and refused to ask for directions. In the oldest stories, Robin's not a dispossessed nobleman, but a yeoman, a free man who owned land. And while the legend is often set during the reign of Richard I, 1189 to 1199, the earliest ballads don't specify a time period. Robin Hood's journey from medieval outlaw to pop culture icon is wilder than one of his forest adventures. It all started with wandering minstrels singing tales of Robin's exploits. These oral traditions eventually got written down in the 15th and 16th centuries. During the Renaissance, writers decided Robin needed a noble backstory and a love interest. Enter Maid Marian and Robin's lost nobility. By the Victorian era, Robin got a serious image upgrade. Now he was all about chivalry, patriotism, and proper manners. Talk about a character arc. The 20th century saw Hollywood turn Robin into a swashbuckling hero, from Douglas Fairbanks to Errol Flynn. Don't forget Disney's Fox version, possibly the most dapper Robin yet. In modern times, we've seen gritty reboots, historical dramas, and even sci-fi versions. Robin Hood keeps reinventing himself for new generations, with each era reshaping him to reflect its own values and concerns. So, why do we still care about a guy who may or may not have existed 800 years ago? Simple. Robin Hood is the ultimate underdog story. He's the guy who fights for the little people, who stands up to corruption, and who does it all with style and a sense of humor. In a world that sometimes feels like it's run by sheriffs of Nottingham, we all need a little Robin Hood spirit. He represents hope, justice, and the idea that one person can make a difference. From social movements to modern-day whistleblowers, the spirit of Robin Hood continues to inspire those who challenge authority and fight for what's right. As long as there's injustice in the world, there will always be a place for Robin Hood. So next time life gives you lemons, ask yourself, what would Robin Hood do? Just maybe don't actually steal from anyone, okay?